That is exactly precisely how I feel after UFC 223. I am so relieved that it is done. There's no Khabib versus Tony. There's no Khabib versus Max. No two-weight world champs. The only thing that there is right now is Khabib time. So I will cover those fights here shortly. Welcome to the Concussion Discussion Podcast, Episode 3. I'm your host, Austin Sherlock. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. It's awesome. I've got a whole 10 followers on Instagram right now, which is fine. Like I said before, a passion project. I enjoy doing this. But if you like it, it's on iTunes and YouTube, working on some other stuff right now, maybe Google Play and things of that nature. But if you do like it, please go give it a rating, what you think it deserves on iTunes. Go on YouTube, subscribe. Then you get alerts. You don't have to search for this stuff. Trying to make your guys' jobs easier. So, this podcast, what I'm going to cover is UFC 223 recap, the drama before the fight itself. Obviously, the Max Holloway, falling out because of the commission not allowing him to cut those extra 7 pounds or whatever it was. Going to talk the Conor drama, of course, because what the fuck would this podcast be if I didn't talk some sort of Conor drama? And then I'm going to talk UFC on Fox, which is this weekend, April 14th. It's on Saturday. Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, number 5 and number 6, going at it. I'm going to give a breakdown of those fights, what I think happens, how they get done, etc. So I'm going to kind of go in just sequential order for you guys, try to make this easy to follow. So, as I talked about the last podcast, that's why you guys need to keep up. Khabib's supposed to fight Tony Ferguson for the for the 5th time. It's already been canceled 4 times prior. 6 days out, Tony falls out of the fight because of a knee injury. Max Holloway comes in, featherweight champ, says, I'll fight this dude on 6 days' notice because he's a fucking savage. He comes in. There was a lot of rumor during fight week that Max was coming in heavy. Now, look, I know Max loves cupcakes. That's his thing. Once he wins fights, he calls his opponents cupcakes, and they're just there so he can eat another one. But I do kind of question, how heavy is Max getting? If he's never missed weight at 145 pounds. He's a big boy. He's 5'11", so he's definitely he's a really big featherweight. He's not a small guy. So my question is, how big is he getting when he's not in a fight camp? So he says, yeah, I can make that weight. I can come in, a lot of speculation. Come weigh-in day, the commission didn't let him continue to cut weight, even though he was close. So Al Iaquinta actually steps in, who is already on the card, so he had already made weight. He steps in and says he's going to fight Khabib. So that's kind of what's going on with Max. Before I get too into this card, I'm going to give my opinion on this whole Conor McGregor thing, right? Because it's making headlines everywhere. So I really was not surprised. Conor shows up at UFC 223 in Brooklyn. His guys, who are media credentialed, the Mac Life guys, let him in through a back door. Conor picks up a dolly, like a hand truck, and throws it through a window. Now, obviously there is some history there with Khabib and Conor going at it. And then you have what really happened was, I think, that sparked this whole thing. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of stories out there, but I haven't read enough to actually vet and buy into those. But I digress. Khabib and Artem Lobov, who is Conor's boy, who was fighting, ran into each other in the hotel. And, Khabib kind of kind of grabs him by behind his neck. People said he smacked him. He gave him a little love tap, a little Russian love tap. So obviously that Russian love tap is a little intense. But, so look, Conor's he's a loyal guy, and he's super emotional. So he hops on his private plane and says, fuck this, I'm going to go start some shit. So he throws the dolly through the window. And also, dollies are kind of heavy. So, Jesus Christ, it's a strong fucking guy. If he doesn't come back to fighting, shit, he can probably do anything. So he throws the dolly through the window. And this is what bothers me. Look, I love Conor. I'm a fan. Obviously, I wouldn't be talking about it. The thing that I question with Conor McGregor is his intelligence. Not his fight intelligence, not his fight IQ, not any of that. But he does things that he acts on emotion all the time. And at 30 years old or 29, however old he is, you need to start thinking of the second and third order effects. If I do this, this might happen. He didn't do that, which led to glass getting in Michael Chiesa's eye and face getting in Ray Borg's eye, which took those two guys off the card. So basically they got paid their show money, but they're not going to have an opportunity to have their win money. So that's the second order effect of that. The third order effect of that is the guys that they were supposed to fight, Brandon Moreno and Anthony Pettis. Those guys don't get to fight either. So now you have two fights because of negligence off that card, and now you have four fighters not getting paid what they could have, right? And Conor's going to get sued out of the ass. Look, if I was one of those guys, I would sue him for my possible win money that I could have got, sue him for pain and suffering. Look, I know they're fighters, but I don't give a shit. If I'm those guys, I've got kids to feed, I'm trying to get all that money. And then they can sue for the possibility of the $50,000 Performance of the Night award. So whether it's submission, knockout, fight of the night, that's $50,000 right there that those guys can leverage and say, I could have won that $50,000, but I didn't because Conor is an idiot at times. Obviously not fighting, but so I really do question his thought process at times. But that's that. So enough with the Conor McGregor talk. Look, I think Conor actually built, and I'm not condoning what he did at all. What I am saying is that he literally just built single-handedly the biggest fight of all time in UFC history. Another reason that I knew it was a big deal, because I come to work the next day, and guys that I work with, they know I'm a huge MMA fan, and that I do this podcast, and they're asking, what the hell happened with Conor McGregor last night? And, the guys that don't care about the UFC huddled around me to hear my opinion. So this guy was making Fox News, CNN, USA Today, you name it, .com. Conor was on it. So the exposure that he got from this stunt, this mistake, Conor's going to be fine. Conor and the UFC just built the biggest promo of all time. And also, hold on, one more thing before I get off this Conor thing, is Dana White says this is the most despicable thing, the worst thing that's ever happened in UFC history. Let's not forget, Dana White, that John Jones was high as fuck behind the wheel of a car, hit a pregnant chick in her car in a hit and run. Look, it sucks. I'm not defending him. I don't want anyone to think I'm defending him. It sucks that those fighters didn't get to fight. But look, there's lawsuits for a reason. They're going to be fine, right? That pregnant lady, she broke her arm. Luckily, it wasn't anything bad. And then John Jones drives off. So this whole, this is the worst thing to ever happen in UFC history. Shut the fuck up about that. Look, I like Dana White, but yeah, shut the fuck up about that. That's a little ridiculous. So I guess that's going to lead me into kind of breaking down UFC 223, what I thought it was. While I'm finding that, I've got an update. on the hernia issue. So military health care, as some of you know, sucks really bad, but I had faith in it. So they set me up an appointment about 45 minutes away to Walter Reed Hospital, which is kind of the hospital to the stars, I guess. High-level stuff, very, very nice facilities. I get there today, and they say, oh, yeah, we canceled that, and instead of getting a CT scan, you need MRIs. Your local care facility should have called you, and they didn't. So that's cool. I'm really glad that happened. And then what is even better is I had to fast. So I couldn't eat, so I was already grumpy. I was grumpy as shit. That's why I just demolished a whole fish nearly damn to myself. And then what made it even worse is I say, okay, when's the next appointment when I go to get the MRI people? And apparently it's like bring your kid to work day. The receptionist had her daughter there that kept asking me a million questions, and all I want to do is eat a cheeseburger and kick her in just right in the shin because she was getting on my nerves. But then they say the earliest appointment is the 28th of April. Look, it's the 9th of April right now. The cherry on top of that, got cherries on top of cherries, is that it's at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday. Yeah, so not happy. So with the hernia pain, let's hope it doesn't get worse. Because I got to wait till the 28th. So that'd be really cool. All right, enough about my health issues, I guess. Gonna get into the UFC 223 picks. First off, I want to brag a little bit. I always do fight picks on, the last podcast. I didn't break down every fight, but if you do follow the Instagram page at the Concussion Discussion, I do post full fight picks. I went 7-2. I got 7 right. I only got 2 wrong. So I am kind of proud of that. So Devin Clark versus Mike Rodriguez. I actually thought that was a really fun fight to open the card. Both guys are fairly relatively unknown, but look, Devin Clark, he looked good. Clint had Rodriguez up against the fence a lot, had some good takedowns. But I tell you what, this Mike Rodriguez, it doesn't make sense because you're a black guy and your first name is a white guy name and your last name's a Hispanic dude name. But anyways, hashtag not racist. But he looked good, man. He looked really, really, really good. Very long for that weight division. And he was landing some very good shots. I'm actually really excited. I actually spoke to him earlier. I'm actually trying to get him on the podcast just to talk. Obviously, it sucks coming off of a loss. But I love to talk to that guy because I am pretty high on him for his first fight in the UFC. Next, Ashley Evans Smith versus Beck Rawlings. So Beck Rawlings is the Australian. And this is the fight that I actually said might be the best looking as far as some female studs in there in the last podcast. But it was a good fight, man. I tell you what, Ashley Evans Smith is going to be a legitimate problem at 125 pounds. What worried me is she was getting countered quite a bit by very good shots from Beck Rawlings. But, Beck Rawlings is no joke, so it's not like she's taking counter shots from a complete bum. But Ashley Evans Smith wins that via unanimous decision, and I thought she looked good, and I think she's going to be an issue at 125 pounds. Next was Evan Dunham versus Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Probably the coolest name in the UFC. I've been following him for a while. This is in the lightweight division. He's a stud. And when you see that guy weigh in, a lot of guys at 155 look drained and, just not good, man. That guy is built like a Mack truck. It didn't last long. Mercier goes in and it hits him with a knee to the liver, drops Evan Dunham, and then finishes Evan Dunham against the cage with some punches. What do you do about those body shots? They're brutal, especially a knee, someone of that caliber. It sucks. I would have liked to see that fight go a little longer because both guys are, legit badasses, but, it's the fight business. So really, what do you expect? The next fight was Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Felice Herrig. Look, Felice Herrig asked for this fight, which I thought was a mistake. I thought it would be pretty competitive. I actually took Karolina to win via split decision, and that's actually what happened. It went to Karolina via split decision. It was a really good back and forth fight. Karolina was landing a lot of shots in the clinch. She would elbow, knee, get out of the clinch every single time. Karolina looked good. Karolina's she's a savage, and nothing against Felice Herrig. She looked good too. She stepped up and called out Karolina, which to call out that girl is fucking bold. That fight really could have gone either way. I do agree with the judges that Karolina won that fight via split decision. It was a fair split decision, but sometimes these fights could go either way. So if Herrig did get the nod there, I wouldn't have been too upset. Joe Lauzon versus, I'm going to butcher this guy's last name, so I'm sorry, Chris. Joe Lauzon versus Chris Gritzmacher. Look, I picked Lauzon to win because Lauzon is a pioneer of the sport, and he is, he's fought some tough guys. He's come up short in some, and then, won some of them. Look, I love Joe Lauzon. You couldn't ask for a nicer guy. Chris Gritzmacher goes out there and puts it on him in the first round. Lauzon's corner calls the fight. They didn't want to see him get punished anymore, which, I like that. I like responsible corners, which I feel like doesn't happen anymore. I think everyone's too prideful. But, sometimes when you're getting beat up, like Lauzon was getting beat up, you need to stop it. So, good move on his corner. Sucked to see Joe Lauzon lose that fight, though. Speaking of butchering names, I'm going to give this my best shot. Magomed Shapirov versus Kyle Bochniak. Obviously, the Russian dude was the one I had issues with. I think I'm going to call him Zabit. That's his first name. I'm just going to call him Zabit. He's the next big thing at 145 pounds. He's a very, very, very large 145-pounder. And, I think he can actually have some success at 155 because obviously with age, as he gets older, that weight becomes a little bit more difficult to cut. But he looked good. It was a great fight. I believe it won fight of the night. Kyle Bochniak he just kind of looked outclassed, really. In certain areas, but I will give it to Kyle Bochniak. It was a fun fight to watch because Kyle Bochniak knew that he was losing that fight, so he came out just swinging sledgehammers at Zabit in that, those last 45 seconds. So, you got to appreciate a guy that knows he's down on the scorecards and goes out there and just, bites down on the mouthpiece. So, great fight. Then we have Moicano versus Calvin Kattar. Look, I hate to say it, but my friends or just really the MMA community as a whole gets on these hype trains way too fast. They look at a record and they see that Calvin Kattar is 18-2 and he's a stud and he looks the part. He's a good-looking guy and he's a good fighter and he fits that mold to be a superstar. And people just jump on the hype train. And I'm telling you that this is not the way to predict fights. Moicano's only loss comes from Brian Ortega. And Moicano's had nearly a year off. That's why he was my pick. I picked Moicano to win this fight, and Moicano made it look easy. His leg kicks were a thing of beauty. So Moicano gets the nod there. I promise you guys, I'm not telling you these fight picks, just as fluff. I'm telling you, I want to make you guys some money. If you're the betting people, or even if you're not, you can go to your friends, even if you don't know shit about the sport, you can go to your friends and just say everything I said, and you'll sound smart, and they'll buy you a beer or something. I don't know, but goodness. All right, and then Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I thought Joanna would get it done via unanimous decision, maybe split decision. This was a great fight. This is we need this in the sport to put women's MMA back on the map. Cyborg's great, Amanda Nunes is great, but with Ronda Rousey gone, we need some savages that put on some really good fights. Rose Namajunas is that next big deal, I think. She's young, and the evolution of her game is unlike anything I've ever seen. You know, she's so young, and the rate and the pace that she is picking up new things and learning, it's so goddamn impressive. I had it tied 2-2 going into the fifth, and, Rose obviously went out there and got it done. But I do want to talk about one thing really quick. I've talked about this in the Conor-Nate 2 fight, how people look at numbers. They don't watch the fights. They just look at, like, a stat and say, well, he landed more punches here, he landed more punches here. Joanna clearly lost that fight. If you look at the strike stats afterwards, though, significant strikes landed for Rose Namajunas, 105. Total strikes landed by Rose Namajunas, 108. Joanna, however, landed 145 significant strikes with a total strike count of 160. So, obviously, if you're just looking at numbers, that's not the way to go. You have to watch the fight. It was a great fight, but I do think Rose is the next big thing. Next up was the main event for the undisputed lightweight title was Khabib Nurmagomedov fighting Raging Al Iaquinta. When this fight was booked, I was like, uh-oh, Khabib might be in some trouble because Al is no pushover. Khabib gets the win via unanimous decision. It was really kind of a beatdown, to be honest. Al landed some shots that I was like, damn, maybe Khabib's corner needs to be a little bit more concerned on what's happening right now. But, Khabib looked good. His striking looked okay, I guess, which is to be expected from Khabib. I don't think we learned anything from Khabib in this fight. Everyone's freaking out about how great his striking has gotten and it's improved. He showed us that he has a jab. So let's all calm down on the whole Khabib is next level elite striker. Not the case. I will tell you right now, and you heard it here first, that if that Khabib shows up against Tony Ferguson or Conor McGregor, he gets finished. I promise you that. That Khabib that shows up, Conor sleeps him in the later rounds, probably late third, early fourth. And Tony Ferguson, I think, definitely wins the decision, maybe finishes Khabib Nurmagomedov if he shows up looking like he did Saturday night. So, that is that, but Khabib looked good, all things considered, with the 7,000 opponents that he had that, dropped out. No one wants to fight Khabib, so you got to give it a Raging Al Iaquinta for stepping up and being just a savage in his home state of New York. He's also a real estate agent on the side, which I mentioned last episode. So that guy's badass, man. Gotta love that guy. He's a fighter's fighter for sure. So that covers the UFC 223 recap. Pretty proud of myself. I thought I did pretty good. I actually put a lot of pen to paper this time, and I don't want to give you guys wrong information. So thank you if you listen to the breakdown before the fight. So that brings me, I guess, to a few current events. There's really not a whole lot going on because there's like the weird hangover after a UFC pay-per-view, especially one like this that had so much hype. I'll just talk about a few things, I guess. Look, Max said that he was really close to making weight. Rumor has it he was 5-7 pounds. And the New York Athletic State Commission has been on the naughty list for having a shit commission in the last 2 years. So it's good to see them stepping up, protecting fighters, doing what's right. Will we ever know how likely it was that Max could make that weight? I don't want to speculate. I wasn't there. So, look, I would have loved to see Max make that 155-pound limit and fight Khabib. But you know what? It didn't happen. So, good on the commission for making the best judgment that they could. And then I just saw this one about 2 hours ago. Nick Diaz accepts the 1-year USADA suspension for the 2017 whereabouts violation, which is crazy that you have to tell USADA, the fighter has to tell USADA exactly where they're going to be at a certain place and time. Jesus Christ, were they third graders? So he put the guy in timeout because he didn't tell him they were going on vacation or some shit. It's crazy. But he accepts that. He will be back to fight April 19th, 2018. So I really hope that leads to a Nick Diaz fight because I think we all really love Nick Diaz. Oh, another thing. My buddy Dan actually convinced me to buy the WrestleMania. I think it was 34. That was kind of cool, I guess, to see Brock and Ronda. Really, I just bought it to see Ronda and what that would all be about. It was kind of cool. I mean, it's a little silly. When I say a little silly, I mean like a whole lot of silly, you know. But it was kind of cool to watch. I mean, it's something different. So it's kind of cool. And now I'm going to talk about UFC on Fox. So this is on Big Fox, guys, not Fox Sports 1. Big Fox. So pumped about this card, especially being free. I'm so pumped. So Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje are headlining this thing. I'm going to talk about a few fights. I'm not going to really talk about all of them, as I stated last week, because that's way too much work, and I'm feeling a little lazy and under the weather tonight, if you can tell by my voice. So the first one, Lima versus Okami. So Diego Lima, he's 14-6. Yushin Okami is 79 years old, I'm sure, or something like that. I actually like Diego Lima in this fight. He was on the Ultimate Fighter 25 or 26. I like Diego Lima. I think Yushin Okami just needs to call it quits. I will take Diego Lima via second round knockout. Wilson Hayes coming back. So number 6, Wilson Hayes. He's a he's a stud. He's a legit guy. So he loses. He went on a pretty big winning streak. Let's see. He won 3 in a row. Then he loses to Demetrius Johnson, like everyone does. Then he loses to Henry Cejudo by a second round knockout. Henry Cejudo looked great in that fight. He's number 6 in the world at flyweight, trying to get back in the win column versus John Moraga. John Moraga, ranked number 10 in the world right now. So this will be a fun fight. This is a tough one. I will take Wilson Hayes the third round submission of some sort. Yep, that covers that. So I've got Lima there. Then I've got Wilson Hayes. And then I'm going to jump up to the main card on Fox. Michelle Watterson versus Courtney Casey. Goodness, I love Michelle Watterson. She is a good-looking chick, too. That's why I like her, aside from, her just being a badass. So in the UFC, she wins her first 4, beating Paige Van Zandt. That was her last win. Then she loses to Rose, obviously in hindsight. No shame there. It's Rose Namajunas. And then she loses to Tisha Torres, who is built like a tank. So I guess her losses aren't, they're not terrible. And then you have Courtney Casey, ranked number 10. Michelle Watterson's number 7. She lost her last fight to Felice Herrig. She has a loss to Claudia Gadelha. But, other than that, it's kind of, her UFC record isn't great. But, she has beaten Randa Marcos and Jessica Aguilar. So, not a great UFC record, I guess, but she's definitely beat some quality girls. So I will take Watterson via unanimous decision. Carlos Condit versus Cowboy Alex Oliveira. Condit was supposed to fight Matt Brown. That fight fell through. Matt Brown got injured, which is a crazy fight. I would have loved to see that, but it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, I think Carlos Condit I think he's done, man. The sport is all about runs, and I think Condit had his, and now he needs to retire. I love watching him fight, but I don't see him winning another, welterweight title. I think Oliveira takes him down, maybe second round, and submits him. But, anything can happen. I could be completely wrong. So please tune in and watch this fight and tell me why I'm wrong. Next fight, Israel Adesanya, the last style bender, Nigerian dude, versus Marvin Vettori. So Israel Adesanya in his last fight acted like he was peeing on the cage and said something to the effect of, "This is my yard," or "This is my whatever it is," and I just pissed all over it. So that was fucking hilarious. He's 12-0, 92% KO rate at 185 pounds. Should definitely be a fun fight. He just made his UFC debut in February, so quick turnaround for him against, he fought Rob Wilkinson, and he knocked him out in the second round. Then, Marvin Vettori, I'm a fan of his as well. He's 12-3. He's got 2 wins in the UFC, 1 loss, 1 draw. He's fought some good opponents. Unfortunately, I don't think he gets it done against Israel Adesanya. I will take Adesanya by unanimous decision. Looking at Vettori in his last fight, he got extremely tired. He is a giant 185er, and Adesanya is kind of a smaller 185er. So the more muscle you have, the more oxygen it takes to feed all that muscle. I think he starts to fade mid-second, definitely in the third, and Adesanya gets it done. And then to the main event, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. This is a fight fan's fucking dream. I'm telling you, I saw Dustin Poirier fight in Norfolk. It was awesome. Justin Gaethje came over from World Series of Fighting, put on, Fight of the Year candidate versus Michael Johnson, who is no pushover, and then puts on another Fight of the Year candidate against Eddie Alvarez. So if you haven't seen those fights, if I was to introduce anyone to MMA, and if there's anyone listening to this podcast, just like being a supporter of mine, but you're not really an MMA fan, yeah, go watch Justin Gaethje. He'll change your mind. He's out of his fucking mind. Justin Gaethje doesn't have a rest button. He doesn't know when to stop. He just keeps on going and going, but he throws a lot of shit that puts him in danger. And then Dustin Poirier is a more calculated guy. So Poirier is number 5. Justin Gaethje is number 6 in the world right now at lightweight. Dustin Poirier is definitely, I would say, a more calculated guy with his strikes. I will take here, because this is 5 rounds, because it's a main event, not a title fight, but a main event. I will take... Shit, I've been going back and forth all week about this. I should have thought more about this before I started recording. I will take Dustin Poirier via 4th round TKO, which covers UFC on Fox, Poirier versus Gaethje. No questions this week. There's a lot of content to cover already. So to follow this on social media, it is the Concussion Discussion on Instagram, and then we are on iTunes and on YouTube. So go check that shit out, subscribe to it, rate it, whatever it is you guys want to do with it. I greatly appreciate it, because if you listen to what I'm saying right now, it means you made it to the end of the podcast, which is my main goal. It's just to get this to you guys, get this content to you, I'm trying to make you money. I'm trying to make you sound smart in front of your friends and or girls, because girls like smart guys, especially if they're talking about fighting, because I'm not a good-looking dude, but I think that's how I got my girl. So, trying to help you guys out. This has been episode 3 of the Concussion Discussion podcast. Thank you guys so much.